Okay, I'll start the recording now. So, welcome, happy Friday for everybody. This meetup, we don't really have a defined topic, and I wanted to kind of make more of an online meet and have people interact more. So, so as far as questions and topics and things like that, I don't think it's just jump right in. By default, I think people are muted, so you have to unmute yourself. And but please let's have it as if we're sort of sitting in the same room, because it's kind of neat because we have a group of people here that don't normally get a chance to. I think I've met almost everybody. Well, I've met about half of you in person or so, but most people haven't met everybody else here. Maybe just a few developers. So it's pretty neat. I think for next week, what we're going to do is we're going to change the time to a time that works really well for people in Australia. We have a number of developers there that are unable to attend, as well as Europe. So maybe we can kind of pick a different time. It might not be super convenient for North American people, but we'll make a compromise for that. Do encourage Cam on, because it is a meeting. Unless you normally show up to like events like DevCon with a bag over your head, by all means, don't be shy. So we have a number of topics, and pardon me.
Social distancing, haven't had a haircut in a long time. I look
Yeah. We have a number of topics, and I just kind of put them up here in no particular order, but I figured we can jump in. And I don't know if you have anything specific if you want to cover first. I don't think we can run through all of these in an hour and a bit, but by all means, we can give it a try. So does anybody have any preferences of things that they want to cover first?
We talked last week about the possibility that I might show my stuff at some point. I'm not sure if I'm set up in a way that I could demo that, but I'm going to try and fiddle with it now and see if I can.
Sure, and then just chime in later on, and we can have a look. What was it regarding, David? It was about
the way I'm using custom functions to pass multiple parameters.
Script parameters, custom functions in FileMaker to pass script parameters.
Yeah, in a fairly what's the word? I don't know, efficient and clean way, I think. And some agreed last time when we talked, and so there was some interest expressed.
Close the door there. I have a teenage, or not a teenage son, he's 20 years old, but he sleeps to 2:00 in the afternoon every day. So anyhow, okay, yeah, we can definitely jump to that. I'll start off then and just talk about, this is not really exactly a roadmap thing, but it is sort of, but don't have time to go through all of the things, but I'll tell you something that's new that is the number one thing that we're working on. We're actually working on two projects in Better Forms. One of them is a new infrastructure system, so it'll allow us to dynamically add data centers throughout the world. Right now, we currently support Brussels and Northern California, but we'll be able to be provider independent, so that we currently use AWS, but we'll be able to use things like DigitalOcean, Amazon Azure, and all of these other companies, and Google Cloud almost effortlessly. So basically, we'll have the same infrastructure, and we're using this technology that allows you to build up these environments in any data center. So we're really excited about that. Eduardo, part of our team, I don't think he is on the call today. He's primarily working on that, and we also have a third-party DevOps consultant that we're working with as well on that. So that's pretty exciting. And that'll come into play. It'll be seamless for everybody. Like, you won't notice anything's changed. We'll just, we'll basically just be adding more data centers. We're going to start with Singapore or Australia. One of those two areas will be after we rebuild out the North American and European servers. So that's coming in the pipes. And I wanted to really talk about one main thing, and this is really exciting, and I want to get your ideas. This is for people who are developing Better Forms. I wanted to get your feedback. And it's we currently don't have a tremendous way of handling development, production and or stage development, staging and production, pipelines and environments. So this is something that's kind of new, and I don't really have a great image of it because I didn't bother to draw it out really accurate here. But can you see that okay? I'll take that as a yes. All right. So it's basically what we do right now, the best way to sort of handle versions of pages, layouts in better forms is to duplicate the page and then mark one of them as a production, one of them as a staging, and so on. And we don't have, at least not exposed to the public, we don't have a method for versioning those pages. We do internally save versions of the page. Every time you hit save, we gather that data. And we've been doing that for a little while now. We periodically clean it out as we change the way it works, but it's all part of this environments feature that's going to be coming out. And this hopefully we have about this, I would say probably about, the back end is about 3/4 done. And when we should have a design for the front end soon. And the way it works is normally right now in better forms, you have a site record and you have some pages that sit underneath the site. And then other dependencies, you have a domain and you have a server. And those 4 attributes, site, pages, domain, and server, work together and they form your app. So what we're doing is we're going to wrap that area around that, the combination of those entities, and we're going to call that an environment. So you can name the environment, and in this case, it'd be a development environment. And at some point in time, so a new user would come along, and they would hit a create site, and that would create the environment at the same time, and that would be by default a development environment. And that's just strictly a label. And then after you've built your site and you're testing it out and say, oh, this is pretty good, I want to lock it. I want to lock it and I want to make that a production environment. So you'll create a snapshot. So that's sort of what's happening here. You create this snapshot here. And then that snapshot is going to push a copy, not the original data that's in your development environment, but it'll take a copy of all of that data and all of the attributes, and it'll push it into a repo. And that repo will have a version number. So at that time, you'll give it some kind of version. We'll probably by default have sequential numeric versions, version 1, 2, 3, 4 for every time you create a repo for a project. But you'll also be able to add your own comments and things like that so you can identify them better. And you can use more semantic type things like 1.1, 1.2, and so on. So that's part of the creating of a repository. And then after you have the repository, oops, I shouldn't have done that. There we go. Hold on for a second. Sorry. After you have the repository, you'll be able to deploy your snapshot to an environment. And from there, the environment that you'll deploy it to will be typically will be something like a staging environment. And then from the staging environment, you'll be able to deploy a version as well to a production environment. And the data won't actually flow from staging to production, at least not technically. What really happens is to my staging environment, I might deploy version 0.8. So this might have 0.8. And then I go through my internal checks. I say everything's working pretty good. Everybody's happy with it. We don't want to. We want to push that out to production. So you'll effectively deploy that 0.8 to the production environment. So this staging area here is really an environment, and the production is an environment. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, yes, sorry. It's super quiet, so it's like I have no idea if my mic is off or something like that. So this is kind of this is the concept. So what this will allow us to do is we had to really think about how we want to handle this, because it's a bit of a tricky problem. We have a number of concerns. First of all, a version might be tied to a certain version of FileMaker. For example, I add a middle name field to a contact, and that may or may not work with the front end. or maybe it's a mandatory thing that you have to capture this middle name. So that means you have to have the ability to deploy a version of the software simultaneous with FileMaker. So I was bouncing some ideas off with Todd Geist and I at one time, and we were talking about how we could work together with deployment routines like Auto. And because Auto is API controllable and Betterforms our deployment method can be API controllable, it's possible to simultaneously migrate your FileMaker script or your FileMaker file, assuming that there's breaking changes in it and it won't work with like version 0.9 to 1. And at the same time, that will call an API, an endpoint in Betterforms in our end, and that will migrate your site at the same time or deploy your site or whatever version. If there's a problem, just like in Auto, you can roll back or 360 deploy, you can roll back. You'll be able to do the same thing. You'll effectively redeploy to, say, production. You'll deploy version 0.9 if you had a problem with 1.0. So I think that's going to give us a lot of flexibility, and it'll meet everybody's needs. Most people will have just this type of environment. They'll have probably development and maybe production. Some people might have development, staging, and production, or test, or whatever you want to call it, QC. There are, one of the reasons why we designed the architecture this way is because we have a few users who have, they have vertical apps, vertical market apps. Jesse, who spoke on one of our meetup groups last year, he has an environment like that where he has maybe 4 or 5 different front ends or different sites, if you will. They connect, they share all the same pages, but they connect to different, I'm just going to turn oh, actually it's my off here. They connect to different FileMaker backends. So for his use case, every time he has a new client, he actually deploys a new site with the client. That's how he's managing it. You don't have to do that in Betterforms. You can make your site theme dynamically based on who your client is, if you want to. But everybody handles things differently. So he'll be able to have multiple production environments. He'll be able to take this production environment, and now you have 2 of them, one for each customer, and he can independently update them as he updates his backend as well. A few caveats of this is the domain and the server will probably not get stored in the repo as such, and you'll set that environment up manually. So when you create a new environment, you'll set what server it is, because quite often you want a test environment that maybe uses the same database as your development environment, but you'll have your production environment use a totally different database that might use your prod database, even on a different server. So you'll have those abilities to configure the environments any way you want. Our citizen developer tier will most likely have the ability to have 2 environments. So it's development and production. And our pro developer will have the ability to have multiple more. We haven't set a total limit on that, but I don't think we'll be setting a limit on that anyway. So does anybody have any questions about how that would work or concerns? It looks really simple on the front end here, but technically there's quite a bit involved on the backside, because we're literally creating domains and deploying sites and things like that all at the same time. So if there's anything that comes up and you think for some reason that you can't, it may not support for your use case, we'll try to incorporate that or come up with a workaround or a best practice. And a few other things that are also going to come with environments later on down the road as well. Not only the API controllable, but you'll also be able to set up monitors for each one of those as well. So that's something that we're going to be looking at with our new deployment, our new infrastructure. So it can automatically ping your site from an independent, not run by Betterforms organization, but or Betterforms servers, but another server in our data center that will ping your site and send you alerts, and you can configure that up, kind of like Uptime Robot or some of those Uptime monitors. So that's something that's new. That we're really working hard on. Jason's working. He's on the call. I think I saw, or he was. He's working. Yeah, there you are. So we're working on that quite a bit. We're throwing a half a dozen or so hours a week at it at this project just to try to keep it moving along. It's been in the works for a long time, and now it's on the forefront or the front burner, and we're really excited about getting that. And one of the reasons we had to push this so hard is we set a benchmark goal. One of the problems I think we have, to be frank, in better forms is the onboarding is it's too long to get to the aha moment, right? Once you've built something, you go, holy cow, this is great, right? I'm a big fan, obviously, but to get to that moment is usually about 2 hours of one-on-one training typically, just to get to that aha moment. So our new benchmark is 0 to aha in 15 minutes with no help. And I think that's really, really doable. Basically what we're going to be doing to support that. And I think I might have shown this before, but I'll show it to you again, just quick, and how this will work. This is something that's new. Oops, sorry, I'm in the wrong org here. Okay. So this is one of the new things that we're going to be coming out with, and this relies on that deployment and environment infrastructure. So we can't release all of the stuff as it's developed in an agile type fashion. We have to sort of release a lot of these things at the same time. So what this is a new site wizard, and this is just this layout will get refined. But basically, what you'll do is you'll have a number of starting site templates. So you'll be able to say, hey, I want to build a client payment gateway. So I just want to have a little thing where I send them an email link, they can make a payment. Well, we'll have a predefined site that's built with the site, and it's already wired up with the pages, and possibly a back-end file that you can use as an example, and you'll pick that. So I'll pick my complex web app. These are just sample data, but you get an idea. I give it a name. It's going to call it my site name. It's going to call it demo site, and a public name. Acme Portal is fine. And then I'm going to right in this stage, you're going to actually set the domain. So I'm going to call it demo, and you can see it's unavailable. We'll say demo 2. That one is valid. I'm going to select my server. I can add my server right here, or I can just pick one of my existing servers. And once I just have to pick one. Once I pick my server, I hit build app, and that'll be totally running. Your environment will be developed, or be by default developer environment, and your app will be up and running. And there'll probably be, depending on the template you used, some supplemental instructions for things like where to download the files, and maybe a bit of notes and things like that. And so I think it'll be pretty easy for users to get up and running like that. Does anybody have any thoughts on how that would work? Any feedback?
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Yes.
Well, what we're finding is almost everybody has the same, like everybody's database is totally different. Everybody's use case is totally different, but we all build the same things. Meaning there's always either some kind of login or token or email or something. There's always some type of overview, maybe a dashboard, or maybe collect some basic information. And sometimes if you have a payment gateway, you always have to show them the same kinds of things. So the thought process here is, why not make those templates? We have enough resources that we can whip together these things pretty easy and wire them up. They'll get saved as a version in our repository, just like everything else, and you'll just deploy it from that into your account. And that's sort of how that works. So that's why we're building all of this stuff at the same time. We have a similar wizard, and I'll show you that really quick too. And
it's great, I think. This tool is fantastic, I think, to show to customers.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be a lot easier. And we're doing a lot of things underneath. I don't think Fred's on this call. Fred was is a UX designer who was in he presented a couple weeks ago. And Fred doesn't know anything really about better forms. He considers himself a citizen developer, a FileMaker. And I've never really trained him how to use better forms. So I watch him use it and he really struggles. And he's going to be like almost like a test subject because he doesn't know anything. And that's what you want. You want somebody who doesn't know, has no prior knowledge. I think I went to the same thing. Oh, no, I didn't. Okay. To be able to get up and running. And we're making a lot of changes underneath the hood on I'll show you some other things too, on how on how a beginner developer won't have to know almost no JSON and to get up and to build things. So this is a new page wizard that I'm playing around with. The final design, again, is not here. This is not designed. I'll pass this off to the designer and they'll probably yank a whole bunch of stuff that I thought was really cool. But basically, you'll have probably maybe about 15 to 25 or so templates. Things like login screens, card modals. Here's one with a card modal. We'll have some type of preview. Probably end up making that auto-generate. Payment gateway pages, list views, detail views, master detail views, those kinds of things. Kind of like when you go into MailChimp, you can pick a mail template and they have all the different ones and you say, okay, this is the kind of thing I want. So we'll be able to do the same thing. So you can pick one of these, or you'll be able to search by them and look for the different attributes. I'm not sure if we'll keep this or not. Here's one these are ones that just use Tailwinds as a design architecture. And you'll basically pick that page. You'll say next. You give it the page name, my page, and I pick which site. This will probably disappear, and we'll probably have rearranging the pages underneath the site, so you won't actually pick a site anymore. I'm going to put it on our admin site, and then I'll pick the navigation slug. So this will automatically wire the page up, my page, and it will check the server and say, "Yep, that navigation slug is available." And then we'll go to the next. We hit create page, and it actually wires the page up, and the page is working. It's finished. So that's the goal for our new pages. And I think that's going to really, really be a major bonus because we'll be able to have themes and things like that. People can say, hey, I really like this page, and we'll say, can we add it to the repository? And you can basically start with that person's page, whatever they designed, and work on it from there. So that's how our page wizard will work. Again, that's using the same infrastructure as our deployment code. This is actually already completed and it's functional now. This section of this project is finished. We just don't have enough templates, and we only have 3 templates. So we're gonna start adding more. So we need a mechanism now for basically automatically generating these really easily. Any questions about that or thoughts?
Well, as I've said before, Charles, I think for developers, it's always a lot easier to take a ready example solution, whatever, and reverse engineer it. Mm-hmm. Learn from that rather than starting from scratch. Okay, how do I add login pages? How do I do this? How do I do that? Just look at something that exists.
I think you're right, and you told me this about a year ago, and I really took it to heart. Like that, just give me an example. Like we're all clever enough that we can see, oh, here's the first name. I can see how it's working, and I can cut and paste and hack. And then when we need to go beyond what we can see, then we can maybe refer to something else. So, okay, super. So we're on the right track then, you feel?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. So those are the 3 biggest, I guess, things, but really they're 2 things. Let me find my keynote here that are in the pipe. I wanted to actually, since you're on the call, Dan, and I was hoping you would be, this question's for you. Somebody asked about what are good billing strategies for quoting a client.
Yes,
and
I do. I like to go deep in this if you want.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Well, first I'll apologize. I don't have a webcam, to be honest, except for my laptop, and I don't use that unless I have to. But I'll probably.
Well, we can see your face. At least that's a start. Right?
Yeah. Well, I just added that. Billing. Well, the best strategy is if you can get a customer to pay per hour. That's always the best way. Otherwise, on our first project. Well, being developer number 1, I guess the first one that actually probably created a project other than Charles, we didn't have all the bells and whistles that you guys have now, and I have to.
Yeah, I should just let me just preface that, Dan. So Better Forms, I had about 3 developers come up and ask for some custom software, custom front ends for their and Dan's basically customer number 1. So he used Better Forms before we had anything else. And it took him a bit to even use the cloud editor, right? to get from using the old method. Yeah.
I built my own in FileMaker, by the way, at some point.
Yeah, that's funny.
Again, I think on our first project, we worked a lot of hours, and we lost money because we couldn't charge all these hours. It was a learning curve. It's a lot easier for developers now, although on my first project, Charles helped me a lot. He spent a lot of hours with me, so I wouldn't have done it otherwise. But we lost on our first project, but we made up on the consecutive projects we did in Better Forms. It's actually been a good source of revenue for us. It's always easier for me to do FileMaker stuff because that's my kind of native app, but Better Forms was a great source of income and still is. I'm still learning all the time, and I have to relearn because Charles keeps developing and adding stuff, so I have to adjust as well. Again, if you can build per hour, that's great. Think of it as a long-term investment. So you might not make a lot of money on the first project, but you do learn, and it gets easier. And if Charles implements this template idea, then that's going to help as well. And all the demo files and forums and stuff, and the forum we have, the Slack community, it all really helps. So it's a good investment in the future. Per project, everyone has a different level of knowledge in JavaScript and CSS and everything else you need in Better Forms. So it's hard to say. Just build whatever you think. I mean, if it needs to be per project, just think, what makes sense to the customer, and if it makes sense to you, and take it from there and see in the next project.
So Dan, were you charging like a flat amount for projects?
For the first one, yes. After that, we're charging per hour.
Right. Have you ever considered charging and selling Better Forms, your apps that you build as software as a service? And what I mean by that is normally you give a quote, right? And quote, like when I used to do quotes and stuff, I would have, maybe option 1, option 2, and this includes a few extra features. And one would be, 10,000, one would be 12,000 or something like that.
You mean turning it into kind of vertical?
Well, not exactly. You're not actually creating a vertical because you're not selling that exact thing maybe to somebody else, but if you have a $10,000 project, say for easy numbers, and your customer maybe pushes back on that, or you create the quote and you say, here's a $10,000 one, here's more bells and whistles, and it's a $15,000 project for it includes phase 2. Otherwise, we push these features to phase 2. Throw an extra option on there, a second or third option that says, here's a $3,000, but it's $400 a month or something like that. And then over 2 years, you make about the same amount of money. And because generally speaking, we have clients for a pretty long time, they're more or less locked into FileMaker. It's very hard to switch out of the technology in general. Mm-hmm. You're going to regain that, over the long run as well. So you always have to make that ratio, what you're quoting somebody, good enough that you'll say, yeah, I'll still do this project. I'll take this on. I'll develop it over the next 3 months instead of 1 month. Maybe I'll take a little longer, but the customer will pay so much up front and maybe an ongoing revenue. And you offer them, say, an extra 10 hours a year or 20 hours a year or a month or whatever works out to the numbers.
That can work with some clients. You always have to take into account that, at some point the client might go bankrupt or might change their mind, might disappear, who knows? And you might be left, with...
I guess you have to say, well, where does my break even? On a $10,000 project, maybe my break even is, I'd say, $6,000 and the rest is profit after that. Like, I'm willing to work and that pays the bills and I'm okay with that. So a $3,000 down and a Six. Yeah. So at $300 a month, that would be 10 months later. So will that customer last for 10 months?
Yeah, I don't know. I
Yeah.
do kind of similar calculations in other areas, but and this idea can work in certain cases. Luckily for us, other than the first project, we're charging per hour, so we don't have the issue. Breaking it up into payments, this is basically what you're kind of suggesting, is breaking it up into payments.
Well, I'm saying to keep charging them an ongoing hosting fee. You're providing an ongoing service, and the world is changing to look at paying for software as a month. Everybody's going to a subscription model, right? Because it gives you recurring revenue. You can continue to do the engineering costs and things. I have a customer that I charge $350 a month for, and I haven't really done any work on that app in, I don't know, the odd time they call me for support because something is, they can't log in or something like that, or set up a new user and they forgot how to do it. But other than that, I haven't done anything for maybe 6 years, 7 years.
That sounds great. I mean, it can definitely work in some cases, and if you can get it to work, it's great because you want a consistent flow of income as well. And I think David Pong, I don't think he's on the meeting today, but has similar clients.
Yeah.
They pay him a retainer every month, and sometimes he doesn't do anything, but he still gets the money, right?
Right. Does anybody else do anything like that? Any tips for quoting Better Forms projects?
Yeah, I'm looking at starting a retainer billing model, mainly because one of my main customers suggested it as a way for her to have me prioritize her. And so I put together I put together 3 options based on, roughly how many hours she might want per month and a dollar amount. And the more hours, I gave her a heavy discount, that kind of thing. Sadly, she wasn't able to go with it because of this whole COVID-19 thing. Her business is very slow right now, but she really liked that idea. And so, but this is for just kind of ongoing tweaks and maintenance on her existing system. But it's also, we're also looking at building something for her, and probably with FM Better Forms is something I want to talk to you about, Charles, separately. But yeah, so that's an option I was looking at. And after I figured it all out with her, I thought, you know what, this is good. I should set this up as my primary business model. So I'm starting to look at it. While we were talking though before, I wanted to, I think Dan, you were sort of promoting the whole pay by the hour thing. Has anyone here heard of Jonathan Stark and his whole hourly billing is nuts concept?
There you go. Value-based billing.
Value-based billing, right. And a large principle, the fundamental principle behind what he promotes is don't bill based on your costs, bill based on the value to the client. And so he talks a lot about having conversations like there's a why conversation that he says. So why do you want this? Why do you want me? Why do you, how is this going to benefit your business? And so in a discussion with the client, right at the very beginning, you try and establish what value is what you're doing, bringing to the client. And in the, say what you're going to build them is going to add $10,000 a month to their income. Well, okay, so charge them 10 months worth of $2,000 a month. And maybe you're only doing, a fraction of the work that you would normally do to get paid that $20,000, if my math was right.
So value-based billing became really popular in the FileMaker world, like as a talk anyway, for a while. Has anybody done that and successfully?
Sorry, say that again.
Value-based billing has become very popular. It was a big topic about 2-3 years ago. But what I was asking is, has anybody done that successfully? Like really?
It's value-based on what the value is to the client. As opposed, there's other kinds of value-based billing where the principle is, all right, well, I'm throwing in some code that I built for somebody else some time ago, but I'm not going to charge you for that because I'm not spending the hours on it. And value-based billing often had the principle that you should charge for that, even though you're not doing those hours for this customer, you still did those hours at some point. And so you're providing the value based, but it's still the value based on the
no, I understand the concept.
And
so Colleen,
Jonathan Stark is saying, base it on the value that you are providing to the client. How are you helping
I've
them?
been doing that for over 20 years.
What is it worth to them? Charge them a small percentage of what it's worth to them, and it's still probably 3 times as much as you would have charged them by the hour.
Yeah, we do
and
that.
If we all do that, then we don't have to keep competing on price.
Sorry, Colleen, you were going to say something?
Sorry.
I've been doing that for about 20 years. Value-based billing. The critical thing is that you have to be able to have that conversation with the business owner, and you have to be able to justify the ROI for the business. That's the key.
Yep.
Sorry. That's the key element. And if you don't have the expertise or you're not comfortable having those kinds of conversations, then it can be difficult to take that approach. So you have to put your consultant hat on, not your developer hat on, when you go in there and have those conversations and when you go into those contracts.
Exactly.
So I follow a lot of like agency, dev agency podcasts and things like that, and a lot of software startup ones and things as well. And one of the techniques I've been hearing a lot coming in common things in all these podcasts is the idea of selling a certain amount of hours per month, say, in development, maybe a block of 10 hours per month or 15, and say, okay, well, it's about a new module every 2 months, or it's a bunch of bug fixes and changes constantly through the course of the month. Does anybody do that? Have a fixed, like I used to be with a consulting house that did that. They'd have a client that had 15 hours per month, and they would just develop work on their app.
We tried doing that a few times. Most of our clients didn't bite.
That's exactly what I was just talking about with my one client that nearly went with it, except for this COVID-19. She wants me to do that with her when she's got the budget in a few months, hopefully.
So, that's really, if you're selling something, you build a module for somebody, let's say it's a front end portal and you use Better Forms or whatever. If you're adding something totally new to their application, that's a good opportunity, I think, to change the paradigm of how you're billing them. If you've been having a client for 10 years and you're every project is a fixed amount, and you say, well, we're going to use this new technology, but it's going to work really well. And it's going to be $300 a month, but I can also throw in some, 2 hours of development per month or whatever, and they'll accrue, something like that. Maybe that's a technique that could possibly work.
I think that's valid, and I think that the important thing is to understand that the real value, or the aim in getting there, is so if you're billing by the hour, you are capped out. And if the market rates go down, the hourly market rates go down, you're not going to make more. You can't invent more hours. But if you look at it the other way and say, what value am I actually bringing to a business? What value either does my conversation have with them? What value does my development work have with them? What value does my pointing them in the right direction have to them? And if they see value in that relationship, establish what that value is and ask for that. You can ask for it in a lot of different ways. As Charles had mentioned, I don't think it's bad to break it out over time, depending on how you feel about that business. I mean, I've taken stock in business before as a compensation because I'm willing to make that bet, but it's about what you feel comfortable with. When my kids were young, I was looking for cash. Things change as I'm older. I've got fewer expenses. And the business can take risks in different areas. But I think that's critically important when we look at managing our business and where businesses are going in general, is to evaluate all of those things on an ongoing basis.
How do you, if you are doing, and this is, I want to pick your minds here. How do you keep things on track in terms of project, Colleen? Like, how do you go about making sure that project is out the door on time and everything's?
Oh, that's personality.
Okay, so you cracked the whip.
Well, it's me, right? I've more recently working with more people, but yeah, you have to stay on top of it, and you have to decide. I know when I first started doing this, there was the conversation, and I've talked with Jonathan about this ages ago, about, well, what is it you're presenting to the client for the contract, right? Some people want to say it has 14 layouts and 16 tables, and it will run these reports, and it will do blah, 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 blah. Whereas when you go to a value-based billing, what you have to do is come up with conceptual, more of an idea that says, these are the problems we will solve. And then it's how you, on a long-term basis, it's how you manage that. So you've delivered something and you say, we've solved these problems. And then they have a business challenge that comes up that says, okay, now this needs to change. And how are you going to, are there times, I know Dave Knight had asked me, so you're telling me you never ever charge by the hour? No, I'm not saying I never ever charge by the hour. I'm saying that depending on the project that you're looking at, what you want to get to is a value proposition that says, worst case scenario, I think that's going to take me X months of development time. Okay, so that's my min. I can't go below that or I'm going to lose money. But I think I can propose the business case to this business or organization that says, you're going to gain X amount of value for this. This is your ROI for this investment. And if we can achieve that, then they're happy to pay me the money, and I've got a larger.
You're demonstrating value.
Absolutely, that's the key. That's the key.
Problem I find is that a lot of customers, as you'll probably will agree as well, don't exactly know what they want, and part of our job is to figure that out. But they keep also changing the goalposts. They keep moving them. So if you have a prefixed project, and they suddenly say, oh, well, let's do this and that, and actually I changed my mind. It's hard to keep negotiating with them. Oh, well, it's not in the scope of the project. We need to charge you more, and they don't like that. So
well, but they never like that. They don't like that when it's time either. So I don't think that's unique to a value-based billing approach.
It's not. One of our approaches.
There is a solution to that, at least from, and this is not something I've practiced myself much. I'm sort of spouting Jonathan Stark's stuff, but he's the expert on this. His solution to that is, if you do this right, and if you can, as Colin's saying, identify the value that you are giving to the customer, and if the scope of the work is defined more based on the value that you're providing to the customer, not this particular set of features, then you get two things. One, you can charge a heck of a lot more than you would otherwise, which buffers you against all those changes. B, the fact that you're providing them a fixed price, you're giving them some security that this is not going to blow out of proportion because you're charging by the hour and because you're going to haggle over all these single specific features that might be in scope or might not.
And that's what they like. Yeah.
And they love that. They love the security of that. They love paying 3 times as much for the security of that. And if you give them that security and stand by it, then they're happy to pay it, because they don't care how long it takes you to do it. They don't care really what specific features are in it or whatever else. They care about delivering the result to their business and getting that extra bottom line. So if you define the work you do based on how you're improving their bottom line, then as long as they're paying you less, significantly less than what they're getting out of it in their bottom line, they're happy. And they're also happy because nobody's wasting time arguing about whether or not this is in scope. We're spending a lot more time doing the work than arguing about what's in the work and what's not.
Well, we have kind of a hybrid.
Again, I haven't practiced any of this. I'm speaking from theory, but Colleen's nodding her head, and she has practiced it, so I'm guessing she's with me on it. So yeah, Colleen, I just sent you a private message. I'd love to discuss this a little more if you're willing.
Yeah.
We use a hybrid. So we define an initial project with the client, usually when we have a new client, and we try to define a small, like just the core essentials for that first project. No bells and whistles. The point is to gain their trust. So they learn to work with us, we learn to work with them. They see our value and appreciate that we give them good service. And we're reducing our risk by only doing a small project. When we finish that project, usually we move on to billing per hour. And the billing per hour, again, per value, might be a different rate per client. If we know that one client is, sees our value as very high, or it's a big client with a lot of money, we might charge them a slightly higher rate. If it's, a non-for-profit organization, then, we might charge them less. Which goes to the value issue you were discussing before. But it gives us kind of the foot in. The client feels comfortable, that they have a prefixed cost and, they won't exceed that. And they learn, to trust us.
Mm.
And then we switch over to per hour when they're happy.
I've never found that my customers really find it easy to quantify what the value is to them of the functionality that they want in terms of their bottom line.
Part of that is your job.
They have a budget, so sometimes they have a number in mind.
But I find it's most successful when you're able to, again, you put your consulting hat on, you go in, you have the initial conversation that says, you're looking for a system to solve this problem. How are you currently solving it? What's it costing you? What is it costing you in lack of opportunity, lost work, lost, market share? And then once you have an understanding of what their business is, and you say, I can solve this problem for you by providing this solution, and it will meet those needs, it will achieve those goals, then you should be able to document and say, therefore, you should expect to make X on this investment. And that, but as I say, that does, you have to put on your business hat, right? You have to understand that. And depending on who your client is, I know one of my big clients is a federal government agency, and one of the easiest ways to sell that was to say, we can document that you will no longer be utilizing X cases of paper on a daily basis. We digitize your document system. Not only X, and we're not talking the people that are involved in filing it. We're not talking the cases that roll. I'm just talking paper, just paper alone.
Yeah.
But you have to understand it as a business owner. Put yourself in that position that says, if this were my business, whatever this is, whether it's they're providing a service or a product or whatever it is, what are my problems? What are my biggest costs? What are my missed opportunities? How can I solve those? And if I had, a magic bullet that would do it, what would it be? And then once you understand that.
I think we all do that mostly, to some extent, if not all of it. And one of my selling points for my first Better Forms project was the fact that I could tell my client, just by switching to Better Forms, you're not going to have to pay, 100 Web Direct licenses. That's already like, I don't know, it was $10,000 a year.
Did they have that many licenses?
Well, they do, but I'm not sure they're actually paying it. I don't know exactly how it worked out, but yeah.
On the comment of, sometimes they don't know what they want. That's so true, but that's often, and Colleen, I'm, jump in if I'm wrong about this, but I think you're going to nod your head again, that they're going to come to you and say, oh, I need a database, or I need a website, or I need, they've already solved the problem in their head by coming to you with, I need this technical solution. And our jobs as the consultants is to step back and say, well, wait a second, why do you need that website? What is that going to do for your business? Stop thinking about the technology. Stop thinking about databases and websites and records and whatever else you think you need. What business problem are you trying to solve? And then let's figure out if a website might be the best solution for that and what needs to be in that website to solve that business problem. Or maybe you don't need a website, maybe you need something else or whatever. And I think that's what you were getting at, Colleen. It's about identifying the business problem, not the technical problem. And if we identify and then propose a good solution to the business problem, they can bring that back to their bottom line. And they don't care how you solve the problem, as long as it solves that business problem and fixes that bottom line problem, like getting rid of all the paper.
Correct. And yeah, because the worst client is a client that will come to you and say, I need a database that has these 4 screens.
Right.
Right?
Why?
Are you the expert? Then you should go do that. If you know that you need a database that needs 4 screens, you should go make that database. Because we're going to come back to the beginning and we're going to say, what are we trying to achieve? And then look at the best methodology to achieve that. And
then they pay you for that.
Exactly. That's the consulting end.
And when they're paying you for that result, then they're quite likely paying you, as I say, 3 times as much as it's going to take you if you're charging them $150 an hour. And they're going to be really, really happy that you're solving that business problem. And they don't care how much it costs you as the consultant to solve it. And then you're not haggling about what features and what specs and scope and all that, scope creep and all that kind of stuff, because you're solving the business problem. And it doesn't matter what features are in there, as long as you solve the business problem and you get rid of their need to pay for all that extra paper or whatever else it is.
Correct. And usually scope creep is a failure to properly do your due diligence on the front end, right? You didn't ask Mary what it was she did. And if you're going in at it from a different approach at the end, then you have, as you had mentioned earlier, you have that in the budget. The times when it won't be in the budget is when the client comes to you and says, well, we just acquired this company. And that then is a change in scope. And everyone agrees it's a change in scope, right? And then so those kinds of fundamental business
define the new business problem that's come up because of this change, and everybody's happy with a change in the price because is that what you're saying?
Because it's understood, right? If you say at the beginning that you're not going to, allow external people into the system or whatever, and then again, a process, a mandate, whatever comes down the line, it's really more.
Yeah, they know that's their own doing.
Yeah,
of course.
And they don't care about whether they're tracking this. We don't have to argue about whether this particular field or piece of information or data that we've suddenly decided we want to track, and we didn't realize we had to track that, so now we have to charge you an extra 3 hours to put that in.
Right.
You never have to do that. Right.
Yeah.
They love that because then they're not worried about, oh shit, if we come to them with this extra thing, it's going to cost more. No, it's not. We've already factored that in. That's why we're charging you 3 times as much, although we don't put it that way to them in the conversation. Right. Yeah, I'd highly recommend everybody go and look at jonathanstark.com. I just put the website in the in the messages. He promotes this, and I think if we all did this, we would all be better off, because we would then be competing on value instead of price, which is better for all of us as consultants. And at the end of the day, it's better for the customers too, because of all the reasons we just said. So yeah, I think it's fantastic.
So the question is, when can you guys all come run our companies? Because Colleen, we need you.
we can have a chat about that too.
I'm going to jump on. I just kind of been playing around with these topics here. We can't get to all of these things, but there's 2 things I really sort of wouldn't mind touching base on, and it is. It's not a text editor. I can't do that. Just these 3 things. So about 2 weeks ago, I was on a call with Ernest Coe and Brian Umlaut, and sorry if I'm mispronouncing his name, and a couple other people. Eduardo from our team. He's a big data engineer by default. But although he's working on DevOps right now. And we were talking about, what could you, I think everybody in any kind of tech community says, hey, how can we solve our problem? We'll solve it with FileMaker. We'll solve it with this, or we'll solve it with better forms or anything like that. And it came to the conclusion that, you know what, we don't need another data visualization app. And we did come up with kind of a neat idea about who's got the time to build all these things. But what I was thinking of just this morning, so I threw it on here, is how many people have clients that need a payment gateway for their because they're maybe working at home or something like that. They need a method to have, to accept, say, Stripe payments online. Is there anybody that would have a use case for that? Because that's something that we can use. We can deploy a payment gateway that you send an email link and it has predefined information. We can have that up and running in 3 hours for somebody, and we can give that away for free for developers to say to their clients, hey, we can build this payment gateway. Really, really simple. No login or nothing. You send them a smart link and they make a payment. I don't know if that's something that's useful.
I think it is useful. We built an API to Moneris to integrate. The other clients we have all came to us already with solutions, companies they already use. So we can't always tell them, okay, well, we have a solution with Stripe, let's switch over.
Yeah, no, it could be any API. It could be. Well, I mean, so we've got about, like by default, if you search for elements in the widgets, there's, I think, PayPal, Stripe, Authorize.net, and I think that's it. But we've actually implemented probably about 8 or 9 of them over the past year, because almost every payment gateway has a JavaScript widget. Mm-hmm. And they all, for the most part, work the same way. They capture the credit card, they return you a token, you take the token in your server, and you add your secret key, and you complete the transaction. So regardless of what the widget is, it's actually really easy. Like it's about a 10-minute job to incorporate, as long as they have a JavaScript widget, to incorporate it into a new page.
That's great, and I know it's going to come up in the near future.
So I'm just wondering if that's something I should whip up like an example. Like everybody say, yeah, sure, make an example, but it does take time. It takes time away from other things. But if it's going to get used by developers, that's, I can offer that as a free. It'd be like a citizen developer or a test drive plan, which is basically a free plan that only has 2 pages, and you'd be able to accomplish everything in that as well. So it would be kind of a neat introduction. It's a little bit of marketing as well, but it's also a chance that developers can offer something to their clients, perhaps. I don't know.
I like it. I don't need it yet, but I will soon, I think.
Does anybody else have a client that you could go to right now and say, hey, we can add a however you want to charge them, I don't care. But we could add a payment gateway to your system. All you have to do is click a button, send an email, and they would click on a link and you'd show them some information and they'd hit pay now. Something like that. Very simple. Not a ton, right? Okay. So there you go. So we got 1 out of 15 or whatever it is. And speaking of Stripe, and I just want to show you, Stripe recently came out with Stripe Elements, and Stripe Elements are a new, let me just see if I can find it. It's actually, I think, examples here. I'll just show you really quick. Stripe Custom Elements. It's here. And Stripe Custom Elements are kind of neat. You can use just parts and you can embed them completely on the form, and it's totally safe. So here's an example page. Can you see that okay? And here's the element itself here. So if I start typing a card, it recognizes the card. And 2, 4, that was CCV, so 1, 2, 3, and then 90210. And I basically hit pay now, right? That kind of thing. It says paying and it says paid, and then you get a token back. And I think there should be a token in here. And message invalid API key provided. Okay, so I don't have this particular widget set up with a proper test key. But if I did, I would have the token already back from Stripe. But the real takeaway here is that this element is 100% safe. This isn't actually in an iframe, and it's Stripe's own widget, even though it's seamlessly embedded within your Better Forms page. and it works exactly the same as the other or older Stripe checkout cart. So you can use either of those, and you can configure what it looks like. It automatically kind of hides the first parts of the cards. It's responsive, so I think under a small, you can see there it is there, and now it's showing a little bit more information, and it doesn't hide the card because it can all fit in. So it's a really nice little element. You can specify all the CSS around it just by giving it some classes. So if you want, pardon me?
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. You can make some it's a very good looking widget, and you can make some really neat things, and it has all the animation and stuff. And it's super, super easy to use. Like underneath, I think, let me see, do I have this in here? Sorry.
Nice. Is there a PayPal similar kind of widget?
You know what? I haven't checked PayPal only because nobody's asked me about it lately. We do have a PayPal widget, but it opens up a window on top. And that's how traditional windows work. Whereas the Stripe one, did I just blow it out? I don't know. Here. Yeah, here. Where the Stripe one, it actually embeds itself into the page. So it functions.
Maybe in an iframe though.
Yeah, well, I don't know. PayPal might have that. I don't know. Right. But this one here, you can break out these fields. So if you want to change the shape of this, like right now, this is all in one, but you can put just the credit card, just the CCV, and just the expiry date, and you can set them all up any way you want on your page, and it's still 100% secure because they're all stuck in little iframes. Right. So that's a way of making 100% seamless integration and you still get full PCI compliance, which is quite handy. So that's one nice thing about the Stripe. I don't know if everybody else has that. Like I said, not that I've noticed, and depending what country you're in, you may not want to use Stripe. We have a user in Africa, South Africa somewhere actually. And, apparently the gate with certain gateways, it's just what everybody uses. Nobody ever uses anything else. So anyhow, that's something that's kind of cool. And I figured, the podcast always have those tips and tricks and picks. So I figured we could have some as well. If anybody has anything, I got a couple ideas, a couple things I want to show, but if anybody else has any tips or tricks or picks, but we'll go around and I'll put you on the spot. So think of something, and I'll talk about a couple that I've found. One of them is this app called Bug Herd, and it's really cool, I think. Let me see if I can find it. So this is this is a style sheet. So let me find the actual project. This is a project I'm working on for a client, and it's for tracking organic traceability for farmers in Indonesia and Malaysia. So they can go through there and my internet connection. Let's see. Okay. So basically they go through this little app and they walk through, and they have, there's certain things that they can do within the app and so on. So they can go through and check off stuff, and it's really designed for a phone, right? The actual app is designed to perform on a phone here. So it's kind of like that. That's actually the look and feel of it. Okay. But in order to give feedback to the client, they can actually visit this link, and we added this software called Bug Herd, and it's kind of nifty. So what it is this only displays on the people we've assigned. So it only displays on their browsers. So myself, another developer, the client, and I think that's it. Oh, and Fred, who actually designed a UI for this app. Those people are on here as lists, so they'll see this if they visit the site, nobody else. So let's say you see a problem. You say, well, I think this space might be a little bit big in here. So you click plus and you find, okay, it's around here. And, I'm just going to put test because they're going to get a message. And something like, test, I put test ignore, but it says the space may be too big. And now I just got a Slack notification that somebody reported a bug in the app. When I go back into the app, we can hide away. Let's see, is it here? It's pretty neat. Yeah, so it gives me like a Kanban style report, and then here is my test, and it also has it looks like it generates a screenshot. I'll go to another one here, and it shows me exactly where in the app that the person clicked. I thought that was really, really cool.
That's nice.
Yeah, and it's it just, they're feeling interactive, and there's no explanation of like, well, when I click this thing happens and this and this and and all that kind of stuff. So during development, I think it's really neat, and it's probably okay after development too. It gives you unlimited projects, about $40 a month. I'm using a free 1 month account because basically I'm going to be done this project in the next week, so it kind of works out okay. The things I don't like about it is I would like to be able to include this into the Better Forms into our test site. Like if you use it, for people who use Better Forms, you normally see red up here. We have this is a test version of the front end, and I'd like to be able to include it. And so everybody can report bugs.
That's cool. I built something very similar in FileMaker.
Click. Hey, there's a typo. Hey, this is that awesome. But unfortunately, you can find so yeah. So that's kind of the idea. And then, what I do when I see that bug, I look at my backlog and I say, okay, what is this thing here? And here's what it looks like. There's the bug. It's like, oh yeah, she said this icon shifts around when you click on it. So then I know right away. Here's the URL somewhere in here. There's a there it is there. That's where it is in the app. And I thought that was, anyway, I think that's really cool. You can incorporate a lot of these third-party software companies. Into Better Forms really easy. The only thing to include this into the site is, all right.
Is it me or Charles? I'm getting.
I thought it was me, but I guess it's Charles.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Something. My maybe is it me? I don't know. Anyhow, you just add a script tag into the DOM header. It gives you a little snippet, and you just paste it, and you're done. That's it. And it just works. So I think that's really, really cool. I was talking to Eric. He's not on the call, but we were talking about the idea of making a special wrapper snippet of code that you could take a Better Forms app and stick it into a site, and this would become your Better Forms app. I thought that would be kind of neat, because then you could take it into marketing websites or any other sites and make widgets and things like that. But anyhow, I don't know if there's a big use case for it. So that was that's my picks, if you will. Anybody else have any tips and tricks and that kind of stuff?
Picks? Oh, okay. I'd be happy to take a stab at showing off my parameter stuff if you'd like to see it.
Sure. Let's do that. We'll finish up with that, I think. It's for next week.
I'm not set up for presenting much, so hopefully I can swing this. I'll wing it. Let's see. Now I've got three.
Yeah, we only have about whatever. It's all good.
Cool, thanks. I have 3 large screens here. Oh, wait, no, I don't want to do that. So I've never.
While you're setting this, does anybody use JSON as a data storage method inside of a file? Yeah, a record.
In fact, I'm going to show some of that as well. Gotta set up my preferences. Hold on. Catalina's security. Zoom. Oh, shit. Zoom will not be able to show the contents of your screen until it is quit.
You'll have to drop off again. That's an accessibility thing.
Yeah, so if I quit, then I can come back into it.
Sure, yeah. We'll see you in a sec.
Okay, cool.
We may end up finishing up. Come back. There's not going to be anybody here. I don't know if anybody uses JSON as a data store, and especially with namespace attributes. And I'll show you really quick what I'm talking about.
I do. I'd love to show that too, actually.
You got to jump off though, right? All right. So
it's not ready for showing.
Pardon me, Laszlo?
I do that too, but it's not ready for showing. I have
Sure, I'll just show you quick. I mean, here's the idea. We create, whenever we have something that needs to be extensible dynamically, we create a field called JSON data store, something like that. We set some validation so that it cannot commit unless you have valid JSON, so you can't accidentally blow it out with through errors. And this is what it would look like inside that field. So you'd have a field and you would store JSON in the field. And I would say user, some kind of user setting, maybe something like a key like user setting, and then I'd have some attributes inside the user setting, like a wallpaper color, color and blue. And I may also have let's say something like user last page visited, something along those lines. And I'm just going to code this out really fast here. And then I may have an object in here. And what I wanted to show you is the idea of having namespaces. That's really what we're looking at here. Okay, so in this case, I want to, we had a use case this morning with Jason and I, where the user can change accounts effectively or change the project that they're working on, and you want to show what part of the project that they were working on currently. So what we do is we have some kind of project ID, and I'm going to say ID project 123. Let's say that's the ID of the project, and then we need to store for that particular project. And the idea here is that you're replacing a join table because it's not necessary to have all that cruft in your database. So under the user last page visited per project, we have an ID called project ID. And then I'd have some other ID, some other bits of information in here. So if I'm looking for the last page, it would be sort of page 111. And then, oh no, please, yes. Okay. And then, didn't get the 111, but that's okay. And then if I have another 3, 4, 5, something like this. Okay, so here's the basic concept. If in FileMaker I need to access the particular user, this would be sitting inside the user's record, right? So this information is sitting inside in the user table. Okay, and I want to access an attribute of that. Normally I would create a whole other table in FileMaker just to have effectively this join to remember this piece of information. But I really just need to know what was the ID of the page that they visited in this particular project. And if they switch to that project, what's the ID for that one or whatever attributes. So now when I do my JSON get element in FileMaker, it would be my user table. I'm pseudocoding this user table data store. That's that data store field. Now for the path, I would get user page visited. So that gives me to this path dot. So I'm going to put a dot in here, and then I'm going to concatenate the ID of the project, right? And now what that will do is that will yield, this will give me 111, assuming that when the IG project is equal to this. Does that make sense? How we're doing that? It's a little bit of indirection. So basically, just to recap, we're creating a little mini database here, and maybe these aren't great examples, but it's like a little database that's sitting inside a field in FileMaker, and that field is just a text field. And if I want to get one of these, I want to get this 222 number, I can do JSON get element on my data store, and the path will be user page visited dot, because I'm namespacing this, and then ID project, and assuming that I know the project ID. So for example, if I'm looking for something for this particular project ID, then I would do this. And that's a really, really neat, nifty, simple technique. And now you can dynamically add as much data in here as you want. I've had little mini JSON databases where I take an entire application JSON, like it's an entire form, like a 4-page form that the user was filling out, and I don't want to create tables and records for that yet. I just want to save that state so when they come back to it. So what I do is I put this under a user table, one field, and I use my user record, and then in that case, then I put a big, huge object in here. And it's a great, simple way of not bloating your database with all kinds of tables and fields, and it's still fully extensible. And you can put any data you want in there as long as it's namespaced. And if I want to set something, pardon me?
I like it.
Yeah, so it's really, really handy. And if I want to set the element, I do the same thing, user data store, this page visited, but the only thing is I'm going to have one more key. So there's going to be an ampersand dot ampersand and ampersand dot, sorry, quotes, and then I'm going to put the whatever it is I want to drill into. Actually, in this case, it won't be going that deep. So
it kind of reminds me of the idea of the NoSQL for those that are familiar.
Yes, it's exactly like that. It's exactly like that, where you're defining that. Redis databases are like that too, exactly the same.
Yeah.
So it'd be something along those lines. So anyway, that's a kind of a cool tip, and you can, it has nothing to do with better forms, but you can use it for all your stuff. All right. Well, how are we doing for time? 12:19.
I'm back.
You're back. You're good to go?
I think so. Yeah. Yep.
All right.
Happy to give it a try.
Okay, we'll finish with that.
Share screen.
Guys, if you have any ideas for topics and things like that, just by all means, just send me a message and we'll try to get, or guests or whatever.
Yeah, I was interested in one of your topics on your list that we didn't get to, the offline apps.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
That's a lot of icons in the bottom there.
In my dock, yeah. Can everybody see Acme Widgets Corp?
Yeah.
Excellent. So this is kind of a framework that I've spent a few years building, and it's got a bunch of stuff in it. I think I'm going to show you just a couple of key things because they're related to things we've been talking about. It has 3 files. This is the view file, I call it. There is a data file, so it's using the separation model. All of the data is in here. And next to no relationships because we're doing most of that in the view file. Some people, when you have a data separation model, you need relationships in the data file to consolidate, what's the word? Fulfill calculations, but I try to do all my calculations now in scripts and stored and not in. It's a principle that mostly works, but can't be avoided sometimes. Then I have this, well, what happened there? Then I have this library file, and this library file has, well, pretty much everything it sounds like it has. It has, is anybody here familiar with modularfilemaker.org, modularfm.org? It's one of Todd Guy's. So I kind of took some of the principles behind that. I haven't really set up my modules the same way because there's things about that just don't quite work for me. But still the same kind of principle where everything is in, let me fold all this up and it'll look a bit better. So this is an example of a bunch of modules or what object-oriented programming might call classes. And I am trying to do as much as I possibly can of processing and everything in scripts and a lot less in custom functions or calculations or anything like that. And part of that is because it's a lot more portable. part of it is because it is going to support much better my desire to adopt more FileMaker Better Forms stuff for Vue. Here's a great example of what I'm, if you build a FileMaker solution well, you can swap pieces out much more easily. And we talked about this last time, I think, where I'm trying to encourage, well, I was trying to encourage the company I was recently working for before I left to eventually swap out their entire front end for something like FileMaker Better Forms or their own custom Vue one if they want, but I think Better Forms does it as good as anything, without having to screw up the rest of their FileMaker database, because the processing can still be done in FileMaker and the data can still be managed in FileMaker, and then maybe one day they can swap out all the data if they need to into SQL or whatever else. So I'm trying to keep that separation moving forwards with my own stuff so that I can adopt a principle like that. Now, this is a kind of a template class. The first script is just a bunch of comments I might write about it, and then I have this template script, and I'm going to show you a bit about what this does. Let's ignore this, because this is going to come back to my script parameters. The first thing I do in any script is this custom function called enter script that does some cool stuff I'll show you in a minute. The last thing I do in any script is exit script with results, and that one might be replaced by 2, 3, or 4, or anything up to 9. And then there's a result variable, which I set somewhere in here.
Right, so that one denotes the number of parameters, arguments?
Correct, yes.
Yeah,
so
gotcha.
If I'm returning 3 results, then actually it just popped up. So then it's that,
yeah,
and those are the parameters. And I will have somewhere in the script created 3 variables that are result 1, result.
How are you consuming those on the other side now?
And yes, so great question, and I'll show you that in a moment. I want to show you the parameters before I show you the results, because the parameters are a little easier to understand. But you'll remember last time I talked about how I don't have one function that explodes all the parameters out into variables. I have distinct set variable script steps that do it. And in my template script, they're grayed out and don't have anything here. But when I duplicate this template script and make it another script, the first parameter might be, actually, you know what, forget it. I'll just show you an actual one. But there's as many of these script parameters get next functions that just grab them in order, which is one of the reasons why I use ordered script and ordered parameters instead of named parameters. So that's the generic form of every script that I have. Now let's look at something that might be useful. I don't know. What's a good one to show? Actually, let's see what's in the view file that might look better to show. Oh, haha, look at that. I did do this demo once before. Okay. Nah, I don't want to do that. Let's go into something real. All right, here's one. New record, current module, just for argument's sake. Nope, that's no good because it doesn't have any parameters. Okay, go to relay. Oh, Jesus.
Maybe you can just explain the concept of next. I think some people might have a question about that. Basically, you're grabbing the first parameter. The first one that's passed is going to go into entity. The second one's going to go to data ID and so on.
Here we go. This will do. This is a good one. I'll show you this one. So we're passing in this it doesn't matter what this does, passing into it 4 parameters, the entity, the data ID, and then 2 optional ones. So I have the curly brackets for that. So QF entry after pause and don't refresh is a Boolean. Doesn't matter what these do. So the first set variable script step, I take that, so the grayed out version looked like this, right? I have 3 of those in my template script before I have any of these. And so I just take the first one, uncomment it, put in whatever that first parameter name is, and close it and uncomment it. That's it, it's done. So I do that 3 times, and then I duplicate the last one. So because in this case I've got 4, and that's my 4 script parameters.
So for the optional ones on the do find and update browser, you have to specify that on the call. I guess if you have 2 mandatory fields, 2 required fields, and 2 optional ones, you can use a script 2 or a script 3 or a script 4, whatever your custom function was.
Exactly.
Yeah, gotcha. Yep.
So for example, let's imagine that this script call here was in another script calling this script. And I'll just move that up there. So what it would be is this one here, which is do find. There it is. So, and I have to pass in, the entity is going to be organizations, and the data ID, that's as in a record ID, I don't know, 234, for argument's sake. Actually, normally it'd be something in a variable, because all my record IDs are get UUID number, which is something like, 47 digits or something. But for the sake of this demo, let's just say that that's my record ID. So there's 2 parameters, and I only have to provide 2. Now, the script won't break at the point where it's entered if I only pass it 1. It's just that the script needs 2 for it to do what it's supposed to.
So if it needs 2, are you trapping for any errors? In other words, are you validating the requirements of the script?
Not at this level here. Depending on what it needs them for.
It would seem to me that you could put in your custom function, your ZZ script parameter get next. If there is no next, then it could throw an error, and then you could say this is an optional one. You could even add a parameter into that or something to denote whether a given parameter 3, 4, and 5 are optional, and even set default values, and then you have it even more so much like higher order programming languages.
And yes, that's true. That I did consider that and decided, why did I decide that wasn't? I think I decided against that just because I wanted more control of how I'm catching that in the content of the script rather than the coming in and out. Now, no, I know why. It's because I've got in my head an idea to build in a more generic error catching process, kind of like some of what we looked at a week or 2 ago in one of these meetings, but I haven't got around to that part yet.
Sure.
But
that's cool.
Yeah, in principle, that's what you could do. So this is how you would call. So imagine this perform script is in another script calling this script. That's how you would call it. And then if later on you decide, wait a minute, I need another one, then you just do this, and there's the next parameter. So that's how you call them. Really, really easy. I don't have to worry when and here's the point of this. I don't have to worry when I'm calling the script about correctly formatting all the parameters so that the receiving script can pass it all out properly. All of that is encapsulated in these custom functions. And all I have to think about is calling the script with a function that handles the correct number of parameters. Just the way C or JavaScript or anything, maybe not JavaScript, it's the way C or any of the other normal sort of ordered parameter
JavaScript
programming languages does it. There's no thinking involved here, and I love that part of it. Coming into it, there's no thinking.
I think it's good that you explicitly state the variables. I don't like things that automatically break the variables out and they're not transparent. I think that becomes problematic for debugging. And although you'll save 3 lines of code in doing that, you also add a lot harder for readability.
How many here are familiar with the MBS plugin, multi-bread software?
I think everybody probably.
Something?
It's a great plugin.
Yeah, so they have, on the Mac, they have a syntax colorization option, including the ability to notice how down here this is red and it says result not found. That's because I haven't got a set variable result.
Yeah, can you Michael, he told me that you could, or sorry, Christian, I should say, told me that you could set the colors. Do you know how to do that? Any chance?
I do, or I used to. There are functions in there for setting the colors. There's also a FileMaker file that.
Ooh, you have to programmatically set them. Oh, that's not good. No, forget that.
Yeah.
Never mind.
But there is a FileMaker file available somewhere that wraps those custom functions and gives you a UI for setting them.
Yeah, I know.
But notice now that I've got a set variable result, this is now blue. As soon as I delete this, and then save the script, that becomes red. Now, why that matters, or why that's good, is because if somewhere in the script, here we go. So I am calling another function that also has an entity parameter, or let's say I'm going to mess that one up and I type it wrong. Hit OK. Oh my goodness, it's red. Parameter QF entity pause without the E not found. And you can't do that if there isn't a set variable step up here that specifically sets the variable. If you've got a function here that explodes them all out automatically, then you're going to get a lot of these, even when they're not entirely valid. So
I opened up a file the other day, and I don't use MBS plugins or plugin for anything explicitly, but I opened up the file and installed it on my computer, and I felt so violated because I have all of these things. It's like I got a FileMaker virus, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not knocking the plugin, but it was like, where did this come from kind of thing, right?
Right. And, so, yes, so that's two reasons to explicitly set them.
Yeah. David, we got to finish up here because we're running out of time.
No worries.
But thank you. I like your approach to that. I do think it's really good to explicitly pass them, and I think it's a nice way. Underlaying serialization method, what are you using under the hood for that? For doing the actual script parameter, how you're serializing it in the script parameter? Are you using JSON or using something else?
Yep. I'll let me show you.
Like, do you have? Put it this way. Do you have? No, you can't show us because we don't have time. But do you have any? Do you have explicit tests and things like that to handle various data types and restoration of those, or no?
Okay, I'm not following the question. I'm sorry.
Like, so for example, if I pass something in a pass a variable as a date, does it bring it back as a date function, or does it do it as a just comes back as a string, or?
Yeah. Okay. At the moment, everything is strings.
Yeah, that's fine. It's fine. It just that was something that the let notation at one time handled really well. But thank you for this. Sorry, I'm just gonna stop our recording and then we can continue as much as we want. But I just want to finish up for today, guys. Thank you very much. Have a happy. If you have a long weekend or anything, you have a good time for that. Keep safe and all that stuff. Thank you. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Charles. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.